Welcome to another edition of Great Health, Abundant Happiness, and Outrageous Love.
Oh, you look cute today.
Oh, thanks.
Every day, but especially cute today.
Thank you. I always say she's my biggest fan outside of myself, right? But anyway, last video we did was on forgiving yourself. This one's on forgiving other people. It's an interesting topic. And
Exactly.
we had a chat about that on a run today. So I think you had a couple notes or thoughts. We'll let you kick it off.
Yeah. So I wrote down some notes, but it's so ironic that it's our ego that doesn't want us to forgive somebody, right?
Yeah, and again, let's just set that up for a second because you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's all of this stuff that I think that we don't like about ourselves, or that we shouldn't like about ourselves as humans. Mm-hmm. It's driven by the ego. A lot of those things. It's your anger, it's your fear, it's your pride, it's your jealousy. And you're absolutely right. Your ego is like, I'm not going to forgive that person because they did this to me,
Right.
and they need to pay.
Right. Or they need to forgive me. They need to forgive me.
I'm not
first,
going to forgive them
right?
first. They're going to have to forgive me. I mean, how childish is that?
It's crazy. But what's so ironic about it is, and this is what I wrote down because I kept saying it over and over and it made me laugh after the fact. But it's our ego that keeps us from forgiving people. Yet by not forgiving, those people, we're actually giving them power over us. So we're doing the exact opposite of what we think. We think we're feeding our ego, but we're actually giving them control of our ego by not forgiving them because chances are they're not even thinking about it.
Right. Well, not control of our ego, but control. We're giving them the power, and our ego wants the power.
Exactly.
Right. Which is.
Well, that's what I meant by control of our ego. In that instance, they get the power. Essentially, they win because we've given them the power by keeping the energy. And I love that. I think it's Wayne Dyer says, ego is energy goes, right? And I think it's so appropriate because we are giving them our energy by not forgiving them. And if we would just simply forgive them and move on, it would be a much easier task and use of our energy. And, when you think about it, if you can forgive somebody, and again, we talked about this in depth, that doesn't mean, depending on circumstances, it doesn't mean that you need to reconciliate or be their best friend. Again, depending on the circumstances, it really just means that you're not holding that grudge. You're not using that energy to, for, I don't like this word, but you're not using that energy for hate, right?
Yeah. Well, it's the old story about someone who got cut off in traffic comes to mind, and they get cut off in traffic and they're pissed and they're flipping the person off and they're all angry and they're swearing inside their own car by themselves. Get to the office and they go get their coffee and they're telling someone that some jerk cut me off. They're going on and on. It's like ruin their whole day. And the other person probably doesn't even know they did it. And they're not even thinking about the person. That's what's so funny about, being angry about something and not forgiving somebody. I mean, obviously you can't forgive the person, you don't know who it is, but you're still talking about it. So it's pertinent here, whether you know the person or not.
That's a great point,
You just have to let it go because that person doesn't even know you exist.
Right. You're not forgiving them. You don't even know who they are.
Right.
They have nothing to do with your life. Right.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. And then if you want to take it to the worst possible circumstances, I've seen a lot of parents of children who had been murdered and they had forgiven the perpetrator. And I always thought I could never do that. But if you really look deeply into forgiveness, what they're doing is saying, I am forgiving you, not necessarily for your crime, but I'm forgiving you. I'm forgiving you out of my life.
Well,
you have no part in anything that I will think about in the future for, that lost child. you will not be part of any of that.
Well, it's like that gal in the Boston bombing, right?
Right. I mean,
What
she
was
was
it? You
brilliant.
shared that story with me. What she got on trial, right? And
yes. So she went on trial. They asked her to come in and give, I believe it was the closing argument as a victim, and she said, "I'll come in and give the closing argument, but I'm not coming in as a victim. If I come in as a victim, that means that he's got this power over me, and that I'm, giving him this power. He is a nothing. These people are nothing really in reality to our lives. They caused a situation, and we can choose to say this situation happened to me, or we can put all of our energy into this person that caused it, which is really what they're looking for in life. So why would we ever waste a second of energy on those people?
That's what's wild about forgiveness, because when I have these conversations with anybody that's like hardcore and they want to make the other person pay, they feel like it's strong to keep going after the other person.
Mm-hmm.
Like that story really just touched me because she's so brilliant.
Brilliant.
And the real strength is to be able to forgive, because, by the way, that person has nothing to do with my life. So why am I going to give them that power?
Right.
And
they're a nobody. They're an insignificant.
I was counseling a friend once on there was a situation of marriage, and he said, I don't know how I could be so weak and take her back because she did something. And I said, it's actually the opposite. You're strong if you can forgive and take the person back, because most people can't. I mean, and what I mean by that, none of this stuff is easy, but if you can actually step back from any situation and forgive the situation, the person, like, it's going to have no effect on my life moving forward. It takes a strong person to do that. I would say it's a very weak person that's going to carry that with them forever. Like that blow has caused so much damage to that person. And I watch people do this all the time, and it may not ruin their whole life, but it takes them down a few notches. Let's just say it takes them down a few notches on the pleasure scale of your happiness in life. It just takes a few notches up. How many times do you want that to happen in your life? How many times can you sustain those blows where you're going to carry it moving forward, like all these burdens of all this anger? You've got to let this stuff go. And I think we get it backwards a lot of times. We as humans feel like, oh, I can't let that person go. I can't forgive him because I'm going to be weak. I'm going to go make that person pay. I've heard so many people say that in my life, and I look at them. I had to learn this as I got older, and you start to look at these things. You have to step back and look. That's really a weak statement. That's a weak person, not a strong person. Mm-hmm. But I mean, does that make sense? I mean, I think most people have it backwards.
Well, it makes total sense to me, especially, I grew up really not being able to forgive people and being very stubborn in that sense. That was sort of the way that I want to say, taught. That's what I learned. Those are some things that I saw. And, so I thought that was being stronger.
Well, I think,
that's what's key.
Yeah, but it's not really just your upbringing. I think we in society, these are no, I understand, but sure. These are the layers that we're talking about that people put on us. Right. So you're taught at a very young age, you have to win. You have to win the race. Right. You have to get the best grades. You get out into the workplace, you have to be the top salesperson. You have to get that job before the VP job before the other person. You have to win. If you have to win, the other person loses. I mean, it's kind of what we're taught by our parents, our teachers, society, and careers. Mm-hmm. And if you think about that mentality is what you're talking about, where if someone crosses you, you can't let them win, and letting them win would be to let them get away with it.
Right.
And that's
bringing
sad,
it, right. It's very sad. And bringing it to relationships, because that really is our expertise. We have a lot of experience in, long-term, happy, sexy relationships. So bringing that there, if one person is, sort of holding that grudge and not able to forgive, guess who loses? Everyone. Both parties in the relationship lose. There isn't a winner. The person who says, I'm not going to forgive you, they're not winning. They're losing just as much as their love interest is losing. And relationships break up over this because people get very stubborn. Right?
Well, I would say the person that's not forgiving is actually losing more.
But they both lose.
Well, they both
the
lose, absolutely.
The relationship could dissolve, and most likely will, over something so trivial.
I know. All I'm saying is they both lost a relationship.
Yeah.
Only one person has to carry the burden that I caused it, because I couldn't forgive whatever the heck it was. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it's a small, stupid thing.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how many times you've seen this in your life. We all have, obviously. Someone said, well, you know, I did this back then and I've learned and I probably could have lived with that, or it wasn't that big of a deal. Well,
most things are so insignificant.
Right. The best thing to do to ask yourself when something like this happens, anything happens to you, whether it's in the workplace or with friends or a relationship, you have to ask yourself, is this really going to matter in 5 years? Is this
5 minutes?
Is this what we're talking about? But the 5-year-old, but yes, but it's even 5 minutes. I mean, we're not perfect. There are things Karen may say something to me that might aggravate me, and then I actually have this thought in my mind. I'm just like, oh wow. I get ready to rear up and go back, and then I remember that none of this really matters. I mean, the large scope of things. And then if I let my
ego go.
Well, if I let my ego go, yes, you want to fire right back. I mean, what happens is when you let your egos take over, like if you say something to me, my ego wants to launch it back, and then it escalates. That's when people start raising their voices and things get escalated.
Right.
But the minute you can step back away from the ego and push the ego down, I'm like, it doesn't even matter what you're talking about. It doesn't even make sense. I mean, I know you might be angry at me right now. She might be yelling at me because I didn't listen. I didn't hear something, whatever it was.
Doesn't sound like
no. Whatever, I mean, it's just, things happen, right? We don't have a perfect relationship, but that is a perfect relationship when we can, each of us step back.
Right.
And we both do it.
Nobody's perfect.
Right?
And one thing that you've taught me that we've talked about before, that I've thanked you for many times is, when we would have words. Because I did grow up, learning that if you had words, then you would not forgive. And sort of show that you were the stronger person, which I've since learned is definitely not a valuable way to be. So you said to me once, we had an argument, and you said, what? So this is it? It's over? And I thought about it, and then we both cracked up. Well, first I think I said, no, it's not over. I would just like some time to be angry. And then,
well, to add to it, so she needed time to be angry, and we've all said this, I guess. I think a lot of people have said things like this, and I said, "Well, how long do you need?
Right.
Do you need 2 weeks?
Funny now.
2 weeks?
Right.
Do you need 2 days? I mean, and it is funny now, but you were still mad.
I was.
And I just said, because I'm pretty sure after the 2 weeks or the 2 days or the 2 hours, however long you need to be angry, we're going to be back and we're going to be all lovey-dovey again, were my exact words.
Right.
Because that is the case.
Right.
So the way I like to look at this stuff is life is short. I mean, 100 years goes by like that. I mean, time flies now. I mean, look at us. We're in this lockdown, and every time we turn around, it's like another week goes by, another month.
I know.
And we're like, oh, maybe we can't even go out and go see our family on the East Coast. Maybe we can't even make this drive this summer. We might still be locked down. Like, time flies. Do you really want to waste any of that time being angry about something stupid?
Right.
I mean...
Well, and I think you're very careful not to say something stupid. The way you explained it made so much sense.
I'm saying this now.
Yeah, no, I know that.
I didn't say that.
But I want to go back to that because the way you explained it made so much sense. Nobody had ever explained, not forgiving or holding a grudge in that way. I mean, I had never seen it play out in my life any other way. And that was the magnificent moment. And that's why we're sharing our secrets, because, most of us have a way of doing things. And sometimes that doesn't serve us very well. And I can tell you that my way of handling arguments definitely didn't serve me very well. And I am extremely proud and elated that I have been shown a better way that does serve me. Right. Because guess what? 100 years does go by in a blink, and every minute is precious. And I didn't want to wait 2 weeks or 2 days. I didn't want to wait 2 hours to be all lovey-dovey again. And I needed to tell myself that my ego wasn't winning by holding a grudge and not forgiving and keeping my distance. I was actually losing, because I was losing moments of happiness and joy and love and all of the things at that high vibration that I want to be at, that we all want to be at. And instead I was choosing low vibration, which was anger. And it's just, when you see it clearly spelled out like that, it's so easy to then look at your actions and know that you have a choice. Do I want to be happy, or do I want to hold the grudge and you know, have my energy down here?
And you do, and to be clear, you do have to step back, and it's not always easy. The ego's still there. I mean, you still get mad at me. I mean, it still happens. Only I think now you get mad for 5 minutes instead of 5 days.
Why would I ever get mad at you?
I don't know. It's just ridiculous. But
do you ever get mad at me?
Of course. But so the thing is,
how long do you wait?
Seconds.
Oh, okay.
I think. At least that's what I try to do.
Here's my goal. I'm reducing my 5-minute madness down to 5 seconds.
Well, here's the thing, and nobody's perfect. I'm certainly not perfect. I know you're giving me great kudos, and it feels good that you're telling me that. I appreciate it. I'm not perfect either. Nobody's perfect. The reason why I'm sharing this, like, we're still working on it. Someone's watching this right now saying, holy crap, I don't know if I can be that way. I have a real problem with my boyfriend or my girlfriend or my husband or wife, and they're talking about, you know, you're thinking about this. It takes work. So it's, and we're not perfect. Our egos are very strong. So those feelings come up. I had that today with business. I mean, I was in that room. I came out here. You guys told me about 2 emails, that one from one person, one from another, that like, it was almost like it was an attack.
The emails were.
Yes. And you were firing them at me. And for the split second, I was like, I was getting ready to go fire something back and send a rocket up, you know, their backside. But at the end of the day, I seriously, it was 2 seconds. I think, as I'm telling you this, we didn't talk about it. You probably noticed I just said, you know, whatever. I don't even care.
We did, because, you know, and our daughter Morgan Rose works with us. And so they're here. So the 3 of us were working together in the same office separately. And, you know, we said, what is going on where people are, you know, sending these kind of negative toned messages to us? And of course, it is the full moon.
I don't know. Sometimes it's just the nature, and sometimes it's just the way an email is written. And certainly text, sometimes it's in capitals or whatever it is. But
capitals,
you know,
are never
all you have to do is just read it and step back. I mean, I went and read the email, came back, and I said, well, it really didn't come across that way. Read it like this way. And the thing is, again, nobody's perfect. All I say is step back a bit and just read it again, or think about that other person. Think about the position they're coming from. Why would they say it that way? What's driving that?
Right.
And if you really look at it, it is some position of weakness or some position of hurt, or maybe they're aggravated about something else. Maybe their dog just ran away. Who the heck knows?
But it has nothing to do with you.
Exactly. Thank you. I was just going to say, you can't take that on.
Personally,
this is the thing. You can't take that on.
Right.
And I've had to learn this over the years, and I like to think I'm getting better every day. But it's work is what I want to just share. But it's work. It just doesn't happen like that. But when you can train yourself to just step back and say, oh, that's interesting, instead of just, you know, making a fist and starting to go after it. I mean, I'm talking about like a verbal fight. I mean, this is what happens to people, right? Someone says something that someone else doesn't like. They say it back, it escalates. People start yelling, and then all of a sudden, two people go away mad. And whether it's in business or relationships, I mean, nobody wins in a situation like that. Both people lose. The deal's off. The marriage is off. The relationship's off. I mean, well, if that's what you wanted, you didn't have to take a fight. You could have a discussion, just said, you know, it's not working. Let's just go our separate ways.
Right. I mean, it's so easy to just say, I'm sorry, can you forgive me? And then it's up to the other person. If they can't forgive you, you have to know in your own self-esteem that you have released it. And now they own it, and there's really nothing else you can do. On the flip side, if you say, I'm sorry, can you forgive me? and the other person says yes, you know, that's the ideal situation. But again, depending on the nature of the circumstances, because somebody forgives us or because we forgive somebody else does not mean that we need to be involved in each other's lives, right?
Oh, yeah.
It always depends.
You always have the choice. You always have the choice.
Right, and the circumstances.
This is about you carrying a burden and not being able to forgive. That's what it's about.
Oh my gosh, so beautifully said.
Because everything else you're talking about is no, it doesn't mean you have to stay
Right.
married forever or keep the relationship or do the business deal. But at the end of the day, it's about you not carrying the burden.
Right.
And it's when you say it's easy, you're right.
That you explained that.
It is easy to say I'm sorry. That's an easy 2 words to let out. I'm sorry. I mean, I can just say it really easy, right? But
sometimes it's hard to get those words to come out.
Well, it isn't easy coming from the ego. So some people let their egos dominate their life, and I know people that can't say I'm sorry. I mean, that's a problem. I mean, that's a problem for them, not the person that doesn't get the I'm sorry. It's a problem for the person that's carrying all the burden.
Right.
They carry this with them to their grave, and they pile up so many of these things. They can't forgive anyone about anything, whether it's being cut off in a traffic line, or somebody says something bad about them, or says something that they don't like or disagrees with them. You know, that's a very bad way to live your life, to carry all of those burdens. I mean, how many of those things can you throw in your backpack and carry in your life by the time you're at the end? And if you've got a whole baggage full of that stuff and you're dragging it, I mean, what kind of life do you have?
Right. Well, you are definitely living in a very low vibrational, state, because you're carrying so much negative energy with you, and the choice is ours to make.
Exactly. You just, oh my God, you finished it. You're exactly right. I was just going to say, it is a choice. That's the wild thing about it. It's a choice.
It's a choice. Exactly. Wishing you great health, abundant happiness, and outrageous love from the Nestic Copper Mountain.
Let's try to make the right choices.
Yes.
Right choices would be to click that like button and subscribe if you haven't.
Right.
Thanks for joining.
We'll forgive you if you don't click it now, but maybe click it later.